Good Thursday morning, Eagles fans. This is Birds 365 with your Mac and Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald. We are still working our way through the stages of grief. I don't know
what stage we at.
Denial or whichever one. I don't even know what they are.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite, the Kubler-Ross model. I love it.
Is it? Can you spell Kubler? I can't.
It's like K. You got one of those German. It's a German name. So what are they called? The little
umlaut.
There we go. Umlaut.
Is there an umlaut in there somewhere?
There is. Well done, by the way. Good pull with the umlaut. I love it.
I can't spell it, but I know what an umlaut is. Working our way through stages of grief after the Eagles 38-35 loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. And speaking of grief, I know what I'm pretty sure I know what you're going to say today because we've talked about it as much as we have since Birds 365 got started, as a matter of fact, and that's about the Eagles' now former defensive coordinator, Jonathan Gannon. I was doing a show last night on WIP. I was filling in for Joe Giglio, so I was on earlier than I usually am, 6 o'clock. So I listened a bunch to the station during the day. And the amount of hate, and I select that word very specifically for Jonathan Gannon, just floors me. I get it. They came up small in the Super Bowl. His defense was a major contributing factor to the Eagles losing. You can be disappointed, upset about the way the Eagles played defensively, some of the calls Gannon made, some of the plays his defensive players made. That's kind of on them. But I get it. In the moment, Jonathan Gannon is a guy you're not going to be happy with. But the fact that he's leaving and the fact that they're going to have to replace him and the fact that he ran the number 2 defense in the NFL this past season seems to be completely irrelevant. This guy's a bum. We're going to be better without him. Does he take up 2 parking spots at the mall? Does he not poop the poop when he gets his dog out?
Believe me, I have tried to figure this out. I forget who it was. It might have been Ruben. You brought it. It might have been Ruben. Somebody gave me a theory that he's when he puts on a suit, he's pristine. He's very sharp. He's not hard scrabbled. He's not Buddy Ryan. He's not And I said, maybe he's not connecting with the fan. I guarantee if every single one of them met him, they'd like him inside of 5 minutes. He's one of those people that wins people over really quick. But I don't know. I can't figure it out, Jody. I mean, it's absurd. By the way, there's plenty of reasons to criticize Jonathan Gannon, and I know everybody knows I get along with him. I don't hide from it. I got a lot of respect for the guy. I think he's one of the best young defensive coaches in football. And I'm not the only one. The rest of the league thinks that. So we're all wrong.
Found plenty.
Yeah.
The National Football League thinks very highly of him too.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe we're all wrong. Maybe you're right, and maybe we're all wrong. And I'm talking to the critics, obviously, but I think it's ironic that the things I criticize him for in the Super Bowl are the exact opposite of what people think went on. And the fact that you asked me all week, Jody, like 2 weeks, how are they going to stop Travis Kelce? How are they going to stop Travis Kelce? And I said, quarters. They're going to do what they do. They didn't do what they did. They changed from what they typically did. The classic, you got extra time, paralysis by over and out, whatever you want to call it. 63% man coverage. This team doesn't play man coverage. And all of a sudden they show up in the Super Bowl and they're playing a bunch of man coverage and they're running around like the Keystone Cops. That's the criticism. That's it. That's it. And I think that's a valid criticism. All the other trope nonsense. That's too soft coverage every time a good quarterback shows up. I mean, I got people pulling tape from Jacksonville. They got beat on the same play in whatever that was, week 4, early in the season. Doug Peterson, obviously, Andy Reid. But people, the Eagles run the same damn plays every time. What do you think goes on in the NFL? Because you see a play once, all right, we got that locked down. We're never going to get beaten by that play again. How many times the Eagles run inside zone? How many times the Eagles run outside zone? How many times the Eagles run RPOs successfully? How many slant patterns do you see to AJ Brown? How many deep shots to AJ Brown when they see man coverage? Same play after same play. But in Philadelphia, if you see it once in week 4, you can never get it beaten by it again.
Right. It's supposed to be able to stop it for the rest of all time.
I mean, I saw Chris Carter run that same damn play without the bells and whistles for a decade into the Hall of Fame. It's just a leverage play. You start motioning back and forth, you see who's following you, and you try to out leverage you. If he's trying to beat you to the other side, you rip back. He did it. He did it for a decade, and he wasn't a pass guy, but wide receiver wise. I mean, I don't know, Jody. I don't understand the mentality other than they need somebody to blame. And he's an easy scapegoat to blame. But the bottom line is, and I've looked this up today, and I didn't know how you're going to start the show, so it wasn't about that. So I looked up the entire season from Pro Football Focus. This was their second worst defensive performance of the season in the Super Bowl. And part of it was Patrick Mahomes, and part of it was Andy Reid. But they didn't play. The players didn't play well. This league is about execution. Now, you can blame teaching to other teams, and you look at some bad defenses, and you can blame scheme. But this is a team that was second in the NFL, and good players are doing uncharacteristic things. Then he had some bad luck with the field and Hassan Reddick, who played one of his worst games of the year. That's a defensive player of the year candidate who plays one of his worst games of the year. And we all thought, oh, that's a big advantage, Reddick versus Andrew Wiley. Well, guess what? It wasn't. You know, this league's about players. It's more, but coaching is more important than this league, than any other professional sport, but it's still about the players. And by the way, Jonathan Gannon says that all the time when he gives up 7 points. It's about the players. I'm not out there.
Right.
They're the ones executing. They're the ones not executing. I mean, blame the players, at least first.
Right. Gannon gets his fair share of the blame, but to hear it from some of the Eagle fans in town, he gets all of the blame. It is I've been doing this for a long time, and it just always boggles my mind. When the team does well, it's because the players are good. When a team does badly, it's because the coaches suck.
Yeah,
it's the way a lot of fans look at it, which is just completely unfair. They don't want to call their players on the carpet, but they got no problem calling their coaches on the carpet, which I think is foolish. And I did say this last night, and let me explain. I would bet really good money right now that the Philadelphia Eagles defense next year sans Jonathan Gannon, who can't coach his way out of a paper bag, that could be replaced by anyone. I'm banking on the Eagles defense not being as good next year as it is this year. And a part of that is going to be the fact that Jonathan Gannon is going to be difficult to replace. But a bigger part of it is they're going to have to replace some significant players. Now we're back to Johnny Max. Hey, how about the players? Don't they count for anything? The Eagles have so many free agents on defense. It's going to be difficult to keep, I would say, even half of them if you want to get the Jalen Hurts contract done, which means you're going to be hoping that some players, either cheaper free agents and or draft picks, are going to be able to step in and play to the level of the players that they're losing. Good luck with that. If Jonathan Gannon is that bad, then this Eagles defense should be able to be the number 2 ranked defense in the NFL next year. I don't think it's happening to you.
No, I mean, that's an easy bet. I mean, if you can get that bet, take it. I mean, if you can get an over-under bet on being number 2 defense in the NFL, 16 yards behind number 1, take that bet. I mean, I'd say take that bet if Jonathan was here. Take that bet.
Right.
That's going to be that's been one of my issues of the sense of urgency. You got to take advantage of the spot. It's going to be very difficult to get back to this situation. 70 sacks, take that bet. And they're not getting 70 sacks next year. Take that bet. Yeah, I don't. People are unrealistic. That's the only thing I can say. You know, it's all contextual. I always say Kansas City. Look, Kansas City was every bit as bad defensively as the Eagles were. I'm sure there's a few contrarians in Kansas City getting on Spags like there were here when Jim Schwartz gave up all that yardage in the Super Bowl, but Brandon Graham, a player, by the way, saved him. You know, if Brandon Graham, the same player, saved Jonathan Gannon, you'd have a few people, but it would be much less. It's about the players, man. And you know, Darius Slay, hell of a player. Just, you know, do your job. What Bill Belichick constantly, his mantra, do your job. Do your job. These guys running around like knuckleheads.
Right.
Well, I've talked about miscommunication in this defense since the beginning of time. The Eagles did it better than anybody. So many teams run this defense. The Eagles did it better than anybody. In the Super Bowl, they didn't. In the Super Bowl, they might as well have been Minnesota. You know, running around like, what are you doing? What? I don't know. Now, if you certainly coaching staff, but my, you know, from talking to a lot of coaches over the years, I'm pretty sure they made the players aware. Hey, you know, you made a mistake here. Don't do it again. Human beings are human beings. It's never going to be perfect, but you expect Pro Bowl players to play like Pro Bowl players. And a lot of guys, and those are two examples. Great. Let me say that again. Great players. Hassan Reddick, Darius Slay did not play like great players in the Super Bowl.
Question on the replacement for Jonathan Gannon, and the internal top candidate seems to be Denard Wilson. You've been around him. You don't get a chance to talk to him as much as you do the coordinators who have dedicated meetings every single week. But I know Gannon has been asked about him and has called him his right-hand man. Know the Eagles have to have at least one interview of someone outside the organization to satisfy the Rooney rules. What do you think the timing on this is going to be? Is it something that they need to get done within the next couple of days? Is it something they can take their time on? How do you think it plays out time-wise?
I think it doesn't play out. There's no hurry, obviously. There's nothing going on from that perspective. And I think the Eagles already know what they want to do, but they have to go through, as you mentioned, they have to go through some policies of the NFL and bring in people from outside the organization. So, you know, a lot of times too, remember when you have these Rooney Rule situations, like everybody knows what Philadelphia is going to do, especially offensively. They know. So, you know, it's not the easiest thing in the world to get somebody to come in who knows they're not getting a job, to be blatantly honest. So, you know, there's a lot of issues with that rule and hurdles, and makes it a little bit more difficult. Now, you know, there's some guys who just want to get their name out there and say, yeah, I'll take the interview and it'll get done, but there's no hurry. And you do have to come over those hurdles. I think it's obvious. Like I said, offensively, it's obvious the way they're going. Defensively, it's a little bit more open-ended. You know, they might look at something a little bit more seriously outside the building. But again, that depends on a lot of different things, starting with the scheme. You know, maybe they want to be a little bit more aggressive. I don't know. The fans want them to be. Ultimately, I think they're going to keep the same scheme because and Nick Sirianni is not the only one. Their offensive coaches around this league think this is the most difficult defense to deal with scheme-wise. I don't know why. Sean McVay says it. Kevin O'Connell says it. Nick says it. On and on and on. They say this is the most defense from an offensive perspective. This is the defense most difficult to deal with. I don't know what to tell you from that standpoint. It drives me crazy, just like it drives everybody else
Right.
crazy.
And I'm not as big a detractor as you are, but I understand your critique of it. Now everybody's playing it. Half the league is playing it. When it was unique, when it was a little different, you could say, "Oh, shoot, we're not used to playing against this."
Yeah.
It causes matchup problems for us. Now that as many teams in the league play it as do, then you should be used to it. As you just said, oh, you see a play once, you should be able to stop it from now until eternity because it's on film once. You should be able to. No, if you haven't seen it in months, yeah, you might have a mental breakdown on that play. Boom, here goes a walk-in touchdown. You're playing, somebody's playing some type of a Fangio defense on almost a week in, week out basis in the league.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, there's always a tipping point. We've already been through this with Tony Dungy's cover 2, Pete Carroll's cover 3. We've already been through this. Like that, everybody copies, and then it gets to a tipping point where too many teams are using it. You get used to it, and then it starts going in the other direction. That was my problem with the Eagles in the first place. I want the, if you can find the guy who's got the next thing, but that's easier said than done, obviously.
Everybody wants to be cutting edge. And we try to be cutting edge here on Birds 365. Don't know if we achieve it, but we try. We will be cutting edge because we'll bring up one of our favorite guests. He does a great job covering the Eagles for Bleeding Green Nation. John Stolnis, going to be guest number 1 here today on this Thursday edition of Birds 365.